Yeah. Hello, hello, hello. Can everybody hear me? I'm really not good at doing this, as you can tell. In every meeting, y'all always have to tell me to speak up. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Lois Diggs, and I am the president as of the next 10 minutes for our chapter. And the reason I tell you that is that I'm going to go ahead and I need to step down now, and Katie is going to take over as our president-elect. Nothing's wrong, okay? I have 4 grandkids who are around the DC and the Tyler area, and my children have asked my husband and I to come and help a lot. And that means majority of the time, I don't feel I can commit to this and other things. So this is the best one for me to step back on because Katie has got it. I mean, you know, she's probably feeling very nervous and put on the spot, but it's good. But what I'm going to do before I step down is I wanted to show you I'm going to be doing membership though, because I can do that anywhere on my computer. But as part of that, the state has redone their website. If you haven't been on the new website, please go. They have a searchable database for native plants. We're going to be putting one on for invasive plants. There's a whole lot of other neat stuff, but one initiative that they started, and I have to have an order in by Friday, is, and I don't know if we could, can we get our, they have designed through a sign printer down in Austin. And by Friday, I have to order our signs. They have got it set so that they are $20, and that includes shipping from Austin to me. And we will have them here for those who want them. And we're trying to still decide, and I have to be honest with you, we can't cover giving them to everyone. But we might ask you to pay cost of just the $20. That's not a fundraiser for us, therefore we don't have to do taxes. But the thing we have to do is we have to figure out which ones we want. Now, I have a sheet that I can keep passing around, or they're up there. There are 2 types. One is members in Spanish and English, and one is just the regular one that if you just want to say why we should be having I think we call it the native plants for biodiversity, landscaping for wildlife at home. And there's a QR code for the NPSOT website. So we're kind of taking a very, very loose poll here. Who would like, and you can vote for both, a member sign? Okay, 7. How many people would like to have the biodiversity that doesn't say member? Majority. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so we've got 12 and 7. So that's, you know, but ideally we want to order about 100. And the reason for that is we didn't have them, because the bottom line is afterwards, I think we have to order them in increments of 150. They haven't officially to get that pricing plus shipping. So I'm clarifying all that before Friday. And a question. Oh, they're 9 by 12. They have curved edges, just like the green. There are 2 holes at the bottom and the top. You put them on just like your monarch, wildflower, or wildlife one. Yes, ma'am. They're metal with the, you know, nice little white cover. So these are going to be available. We don't meet in July, but they should be to me by the middle of July and at the August meeting, and possibly for the TDG summer symposium, we could have them for sale, or if we have, however we've worked it out, if it's a member card or not. Yes, sir.
Stakes come with them?
No, sorry. No, the stakes don't come. You'll have to go to Home Depot and buy the little stake and, you know, get the screws. We could check into that, have that as another cost, but no, it doesn't come with stakes. So that's mainly what is the big news that's going on, is we want to start doing this, and maybe as time goes on, if people felt comfortable, they might have it noted in their yard, specifically a beautiful garden that's all natives. And as long as we don't have anything that notes your location, your home, your address, whatever, we could start maybe posting in the Dallas area. This is, you know, some homes that have, and even if you also had not a specific layout, but maybe the plants in there or something about how it was happened, you know, it's just a really nice thing to do. So I'm going to be ordering those by Friday at midnight, and that'll be done. And the only other thing we wanted to do was, we've had 2 members of our chapter pass this last several weeks. One was, I don't know which one I got up here first, is I never met James, but I sent him an email and sent him his 25-year pin before he passed. And so he was very appreciative of that. But he is going to have a memorial service. I'll let that stay there for a minute. It's pretty small print, but there will be a memorial service at 10 a.m. Thursday, the 29th at St. Thomas Aquinas. And then internment will be at the Hillcrest Memorial Park. They're also, and I know those of you who maybe have known him, if anyone wanted to say anything about him, but you know, it was just kind of a shock for some of us. I never truly got to know him, but he seemed like such a wonderful soul. The other person who passed away recently was Jenny Salter. She was a master gardener. Jenny Salter? Yeah, Salter. She was a master gardener, and so I want to thank, I think, Cynthia. You sent this out to us as master gardeners, and so I couldn't officially find the obituary, but I thought this was just appropriate. She was living up at Presbyterian Village and was one of our speaker bureaus for master gardeners, very involved in all the plant world, native world, and just another wonderful, great soul. And so her service, yeah, right there, real big, is this coming Saturday at 10 o'clock, and it'll be at the Presbyterian North, their chapel. So if you need to know anything more, feel free, email me at lois.diggs@npsot.org, and I can give you more information about that. But this basically is everything I wanted to share with you, and to officially let y'all know that Katie will be doing all this good kind of stuff. But if you ever need anything, I'm still around. And there's something I'm doing. Oh, I don't have the card. Amy Martin's book. Do y'all know about Amy Martin's book? Does anybody have a card for me? Amy Martin has worked for years on this amazing book, specifically Dallas-Fort Worth area. It's called The Wild Ones, I think it is.
DFW Wild.
DFW Wild. And her book will be coming out. Why don't we let July 11th. It's called Explore the Amazing Nature in and Around Dallas-Fort Worth. And we've got cards about it. It'll be available July 11th through the Timber Press. And you can find more information and how to buy it at wild-dfw.com. So get a card. One of the cool things is that featured in this book is Cindy Kearney's yard. Ta-da! So you'll get to see the transformation there. So let's support Amy. She's just an amazing woman in the native world and everything we need. So yes.
Pre-order.
Yes, you see, you can go on and pre-order. So pre-order now. I don't know how much they are. I'll give you this card. It's from the wild-dfw.com. So I'll give you this card. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
Amy will be our guest speaker in October.
All right, and she will be our guest speaker for the chapter in October.
And she'll be selling her book and autographing.
Yeah, so if you want to wait and buy it then and have an autograph, or you may want to read it before then. So, you know, there's that. So did I get, wait, yes, Cindy.
She's also having 3 release parties, Dallas, parents in Denton counties. They're on Facebook. You can buy it then and she'll sign them.
All right, so she's got to go look on Facebook and everything. So things are really happening in our native plant world. So really exciting. Just last thing on our signs, if you find that you think you really want to make sure that you want more than one, email me again and let me know. But we do the landscape right here, and the Gaston Christian Center actually had Carol Feldman develop it around. And so we will be putting 4 signs. They're members of NPSOT, of the Dallas chapter, and we will be putting the Spanish and the English as member and as the biodiversity, 2 out here and 2 at the back, where a lot of people come in for the Healing Hands and the Gateway of Grace Ministry. I'll talk to the executive director. She may have another place she'd like them, but there will be 4 signs specifically as soon as we get them up here to let people know. So they're all gung-ho on us, making sure and doing things for the native plants around the landscape.
Will you be ordering Spanish signs? Well, because I would like the English and the Spanish one and not the member sign, but the other.
We're thinking right now we'd be trying to order about 150 total and divide it amongst the four. And we are thinking between 10 and 15 to 20 Spanish. I don't want to undersell the Spanish, but I don't know how many. I'm just, kind of shooting in the dark. But we thought we'd get at least 15 of each one in Spanish, maybe 20, and that's 40, and then divide the rest up, But yes, definitely, we will have Spanish. Okay, that's it. Thank you all for letting me do all this for a few months, and it's Katie time.
Thank you, Lois. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you guys online that are attending too. Welcome. Happy y'all are here. I didn't know.
Can't hear you.
Oh, I will speak louder.
Speak into the mic. Oh, you want her?
Oh, there we go. Is that better? Can y'all hear me now? Okay, sorry about that.
Keep talking.
All right.
Loud.
Thanks. All right, welcome again. Happy you guys are here. Today, is that okay if I introduce Janet, or did you want to? Did you want to introduce Carol? Okay. All right, today's speaker, we have Carol Clark. She is an amateur botany enthusiast, a monarch conservation specialist for Monarch Watch, a Texas master naturalist, a longtime member of the Native Plant Society of Texas. She and her husband own and operate Clark Haven, a wildlife preserve and custom wildflower seed business in Cook County. Her favorite things to do are leading discovery walks in local natural areas and finding and photographing interesting plants. So thank you so much for coming, and I will hand over the mic to Carol Clark.
My first question is, can you hear me? No. Okay. Okay, we'll go. Can we move the podium?
That's okay.
Okay, how's that? Better? Great. Well, it's great to be here today. And when I look around, I see a lot of familiar faces. And thank you for coming out in the heat. I know it is tough out there, and a lot of us arrived pretty hot and soggy. But the genesis of this program came from the Dallas Library. See, what can people plant? They want to know which native plants can they plant that are going to survive drought. And that was a couple of years ago. It's gone through a couple of renovations since then. And usually that's given to master gardener groups, believe it or not. They like this program, they ask for it a lot. So let's get started on this. Let's see, where did our remote go? Is it back here? Here it is. Okay. We got transfer on the side. There you go. So like master gardener groups, I know that there are some people out there in that audience who are really into Goldilocks plants. They're all jealous of each other's roses, and they're buying things that are rare and from overseas that need things exactly right. And they're going to bend over backwards, replace soil, and do all of these amazing things to try to keep that plant alive far from where it's really happy. But I am not that Goldilocks plant gardener. I don't want a plant that needs it not too sunny, not too shady, not too wet, not too dry, not too hot, not too cold, not too acidic, or not too alkaline. What I'm looking for my garden, because I'm essentially lazy, is the Chuck Norris plant. And so this is going to be about those Texas plants that simply are adaptable, resilient, and flexible in their needs for the most part. So one thing that you might want to look for as you go through this program are some water miser adaptations. And these things tend to hold true even if you're not looking at the exact plant that we're talking about. So when you go to the nursery and you see some of these things, you might think to yourself, oh, I bet you that plant is good for a low water landscape or has adaptations built right in that can help it conserve water. So things with silvery foliage are usually more heat and drought tolerant than the counterpart with the green foliage. Things with fuzzy leaves can hold water in and also catch the morning dew, like plants with the smooth leaves can't always. Things that have reduced leaves and are mostly stems with leafy leaves, those might be water miser adaptations to keep them from losing too much water through evaporation from their leaves. Thick, stiff leaves, some plants have leaves that are practically like cardboard. And those are usually plants that don't need a whole lot of extra water. Succulent stems or leaves, they actually can hold water right in their stems, like the cactuses and succulents. And there are plants that are neither a cactus nor a true succulent that have really thick, juicy leaves as well. Some plants have storage organs underground to help them store water and nutrients. Corms and tubers and rhizomes are all ways that plants can store water and nutrients underground. And so those will help them get through those tough times as well. The milkweeds over there, tiny milkweeds, but underneath they have big taproots forming, and those taproots are going to help those plants sprout back up when they're ready again. A deep root system can help a plant collect water from further afield, deeper in the soil layers. Fleshy root systems, if it's not a true corm or tuber, sometimes you still get big fat roots, and those can hold a lot of moisture. I think maybe some of our native orchids are in that category with really fleshy roots. Now, how about these thorns or spines or teeth to prevent herbivory? If you're the only thing out there holding water in your tissues, you want to not be the thing that gets chosen by the deer, the antelope, whatever used to be here, buffalo. So thorns and spines are also an adaptation. They might have been the only thing left green in certain times of year. And those thorns and spines are to prevent things from eating them. And the last would be a waxy leaf coating. Sometimes you can feel that, or sometimes you can kind of see it as a sort of a whitish blue coating on the leaf. So as we go through, you'll look for some water miser adaptations. So that we see eyebrows go up when they spotted one. Let's look at shrub first. So for a dry location, you might be interested in the sotol. Sotals are really neat looking plants. They tend to stay very organized, but they're wickedly sharp on the edges. So you really want to be careful about where you put one of these. Definitely not anywhere near a walkway where somebody's going to get sawed to bits by just passing it. They are really cool though. They can have a bloom stalk that goes 13 feet up into the air. And it's just covered with tiny, tiny white flowers, and those are covered with leaves. So a really, really neat plant. That bloom stalk is hollow and light, and I'm told it makes the best walking stick anywhere. So that's another use of the sotol. They do come in this kind of blue-green, but they also come in a more frankly green color. Yeah.
Another use is a beverage, an alcoholic beverage called soto is made from.
Yes, yes, it's also edible and drinkable in some ways. So that's very cool. That comment was that you can do a beverage out of this, and that was you can also roast the roots separately. That's okay. It just gave me. Oh, there we go. Okay, so here we see the bloom and agreement together. And the reason I wanted to show you these, even though this is about plants for droughts and floods, these are more accustomed to growing in dry parts of the state. But these two have been up at the Herd Museum with average weather. A lot of times the irrigation system is broken, so they get what they get. For like 20 years, these have been there, and they have survived some very wet years as well. Oh, there it is blooming. That's that tall spike, because now that's so tall. Texas sage, Leucophilum for Texas. This one is one that would really prefer a drier environment. And we do have some of those clustered up front in this program. But I watched these, and I watched them during 2 really wet years, and they survived. They put them on a little berm. You can almost see it there on the picture, where they had just built that up a little bit above grade level. And these plants that really want that hot, dry sun did fine, as long as they were raised just a little bit. I thought that was a really interesting choice. There we go. It's just fun. There is that close up of the Texas sage, and you can see those leaves where they look like they're pale, they're a little silvery, right? That is a water miser adaptation to look for. Spineless prickly pear. And honestly, you need to be careful because although it doesn't have the big standing thorns on it, those large spines, it still has a little itchy hairs. And so it's not something you want to roll in, even though it doesn't have the big standing spines. But it's really pretty flexible. Occasionally, we'll see one that has rotted out in a very cold, very wet winter. But I have watched them for 15 years in some places, and they were still there. They really didn't care for the freezing again, and some of them finally gave up during that very cold, wet winter. It's another view, again, the herd, you can see very corner of the so-called Did you look? So, as a blue, I think the color can vary a little bit, but it's quite lovely no matter what color it is looking for you. And here it is, a lot of these different plants combine to look classically dry, a very xeric landscape down in Driftwood, Texas. And this looks like Driftwood, Texas. It's a dry place. However, Texas, at least a part of Texas, is really truly bipolar. It's either too hot, or too cold, or too wet, or too dry. And so our plants, if you really want to succeed in not replacing things all the time, we really need to think about the flip side between two. What survives this periodic flooding? And for that, I looked a lot to my local green belt. So this is White Rock. And you know, maybe you know this person, is a friend of mine that took pictures the day that Dallas flooded really badly a couple of years ago. And there was just water everywhere. So what I did was look for inspiration to my local green belt, where things flood repeatedly and dry out to let soil is present. Those are flood waves of debris piles. And the water in this woods can get up to my eyeballs and connect the creek to the lake in this park. And all through that woods, there's 4 or 5 feet of water. That's a lot of water for a plant to deal with. So what's in there? Elderberries, elderberries, and they don't I want to right now. They get an occasional, and they're doing. There's some close-up. Of course, the fruit is edible, but not raw. You must cook that for it to be safe. Another plant that I find in this woods is the aromatic sumac, or the 3-leaf sumac. This one is a really sweet plant. It also grows in the woods, but out on the prairie as well, where it gets absolutely full sun. So it can take those baking conditions out on the prairie. It can take the occasional flooding followed by dryness in the woods as well. The one out on the prairie, I think it might be like my favorite bush. I actually go visit it sometimes just to say hi. I've been watching it for like 15 years and it has remained even small the entire time. It's perfectly round with nobody trimming it. So I think that this is one that really could be used more often in landscaping because it tends to self-shape. In the woods, it's a little bit less orderly in its shape. Yeah, well, this one isn't a native here, but by golly, if there's a plant that will take anything you throw at it, it's got to be turf staff. It can grow in full shade, part shade, full sun, anything in between, and bloom, even in shade. It can be in an area that gets flooded, and it can be in an area that just is like a parking lot, medium, that never gets watered. And it seems to do fine under all of those different conditions. It's just not fuzzy. Here's one that's probably going to surprise you. That if you have seen it in the wild, you probably saw it at the end of the lake, at the edge of the river, at the edge of the stream. And you probably said to yourself, well, it must be wet paint. Here it is, and it's flooded, and it's perfectly happy there. But I got a hot tip from Yale colleague. She used to be very involved with the Native Plant Society, and she said, I don't think that plant really needs all that much water. And I said, what do you mean? It's, it's always the edge of the lake, at the edge of the river. And she said, well, I see it on a median in the road that gets no irrigation in Richardson. And that is about as dry and compacted as you can imagine if you time there. So she said, what she thinks is that it requires a lot of water to germinate. Well, once it is growing, it is fine and it is durable. And I've had one in my landscape for about 20 years now. And I usually don't water at all. So it's just fine. I gotta tell you, this plant should be widely planted, used more often. It is a pollinator magnet and a really pretty plant. Yeah. How long do they bloom? Bud bush, that kind of depends on the weather. They start late, and so I think they're just getting going now, and they'll bloom through the summer. I have photographed them in July, and I think it sort of depends on how hot and how wet it is. Does anybody have other information on that?
I have another question.
Okay.
In your non-irrigated, non-lakeside spot, how big is it?
In my non-irrigated, non-lakeside garden, my one before it got really too shady for it, got about 6 feet tall. The other one's still baby. But the reason I really like my bush, it is nice, pretty fun. Every kind of butterfly you can imagine, lots and lots of them.
It was planted in a prairie situation that maybe is watered regularly for the first couple of years.
Yes, she's asking, can you put that in sort of a prairie garden situation where it might get watered for a couple of years at first and then not get watered so much? I suspect it would do okay, unless you had some really droughty years, I think. But it is not the the thirsty water sponge that everybody imagines that it is. It also doesn't actually care if it gets flooded. So Gail's take on that is that it's less picky about air around its roots, that it doesn't need a lot of oxygen around its roots. So another one that I assumed had to be grown in East Texas, not true. I find it in Collin County where we have nothing but that alkaline black clay. I find it in the red sandy soils both to the east and the west. This American beautyberry. And you can see where it got its name. Those berries are just an outlandish shade of pinky purple. Really, really pretty, but pretty flexible in its needs. Now it will wilt in midday. It will tell you that it's suffering and it's going to die. And it's a real drama queen on a hot day, but it will perk up. If you go out at 9 o'clock with a flashlight, it's pretty perked up, even if you haven't watered it. It's just conserving water by trimming the leaves. Yes, question?
You just answered my question. I was going to ask you whether the drippy leaves achieve anything.
thing.
Yes, so he was asking about the drooping. It's just a water conservation strategy. And it will, raise its own leaves even with or without a watering. This is one that accidentally showed up at my house. I didn't recognize the leaf, so I decided to let it stay until I could find out what it was. I was really glad I let it stay. And it is sort of anchoring my front bed right now. Oh, yeah, she says that she's got one in full sun and it's doing fine. That's kind of interesting because in the wild, it's usually in shade. And I started with a full sun yard, but now I have so much shade that I'm looking for shade plants. This is a plant that grows in the green belt. It grows at the edge of the woods, in the woods, all over that area. It gets flooded and it's fine with that. It dries out and it's fine with that. And I love the bubblegum berries and the really shiny leaves with those neat veins. Did you have a question?
I think the Herb Museum found that was pretty invasive.
It does, it can spread. But I have been watching some that just remain tree-like. And so I think it may vary from specimen to specimen. They do have quite a few that the birds, I think, have planted there. I'm not sure it spreads by runners. Do you know that it spreads underground or? Yeah, they have had some at the Herb Museum's front gardens for many, many years up there. Yeah, but I do like this one, and especially if you have room to add some plants that get a little bit larger for birds. This is a really good bird plant. A lot of birds will eat these berries. They will turn colors too. They turn black like this. That was actually at the Herb Museum. Another one of my favorites is the rusty black fall viburnum. And this is one that I always see in the woods, so I thought it had to have shade, but Hert's got one that's gotten a fair amount of sun where it is, and it's doing pretty well. And that sunnier location, just covered with blossoms most years. I have one, for some reason, it is stubborn about blooming. I don't know why. The particular one I bought just doesn't want to bloom for me. But it's not too picky about sun or shade. And it does grow in that woods that floods and then dries out and cracks. Those shiny leaves are really nice. I like shiny leaves.
So, Robert, pretty shade.
Yes, it's definitely shade tolerant. I have some up at my farm, and my farm is red, rocky, sandy soil. And on under the woods, it is really rocky. You stick a shovel in, you hit rock. And it is full of the rusty black fall viburnum in full shade there. Yukon holly is another one that's really flexible. It's hard to kill these, honestly, I think. They come in all different kinds of cultivars that are tall and slender or sort of ordinary or dwarfed. But it doesn't really care how much water it gets. It doesn't need a lot. And it doesn't really care how much sun it gets. When you find this in the wild, it's usually an understory shrub. But this is out in the parking lot in the middle of full sun. It's getting zero shade there and it's doing just fine. There's a different version, the weeping yukon. Unfortunately, this garden where I took this picture and many others is now gone. It belonged to a church in this wonderful, huge labyrinth garden full of native plants, and it's gone now. It's a different form of the Yukon holly, the very columnar Will Flemings. I must say the herd had some difficulty with these as they got really tall and large. They started to fall apart. But they were there for a good 20 years before they really had to go. There's the meatball one, the dwarf yukon. These are all males, so they won't have the berries. When you're buying a yukon, if you want the berries, you need to make sure you're getting a female plant because the male and female flowers are on different plants. Coralberry. This is kind of a love-hate thing. I have friends who love their coral berries. And I put it in there because I have friends who love their coral berries. I'm not that fond of mine. Mine is a little bit rangy and lanky and ill-behaved. It shows up in new places where I didn't find it because it does spread sideways. But if you have a section of yard that you'd like to fill, this would fill in a corner, and it will fill in a shady corner, which is kind of a premium benefit in my estimation. So it's really kind of nice in that regard. Now, what is the surprise about this plant? You will see it in every woodland in Collin County, definitely in the shade. I have it on my farm in full sun, and it just showed up there in the middle of the prairie, and it's doing fine. So don't let anybody tell you that coralberry has to have a lot of shade. It doesn't. I actually think it looks better in the sun. It's sort of performing a little better out there. Another holly that's similar to the yolk pond, but sheds its leaves each year is the cotton hall holly. And again, this comes in male and female plants. And so you need to be careful if you want the berries that you do have one that's going to have berries. And the easiest way to do that is to buy it when you can see the remains of the berries or little berries forming on it. I really like that white look with the red contrasting berries. Yes, question?
Does it be pollinated to make berries?
Such a good question. We were just about to get to that here. And she's asking, and the master gardeners always ask this, do I have to have both a male and female plant for it to make berries? And the answer is no. Bees fly quite far, and you're going to find small hollies all through your local green belts. And so as long as you have the female, there's a male somewhere nearby. Other holly species can also pollinate this. Yeah. So I had heard, actually, a master gardener told me that you had to have a male and a female within 20 feet of each other. Yeah, and I just kind of like them because these are not wind pollinated, they're insect pollinated. And all the insects in my yard have a little more vigor than that. They move more than 20 feet.
You had a dwarf male, would it, of a yolk-on holly, would it fertilize?
I suspect it would. Yeah, I suspect it would. It's the same species, just selection. So it should do fine. And your neighborhood is full of dwarf yolk-ons. So they're out there already. Oh, no, it's not the same species. I'm sorry. We're talking about possible now. Right, right. But it's related and it might be able to do that. I'm not positive on that question. Oh, something bad happens. Let's see. I think I did that myself. An extra button on this road that I wasn't familiar with, but now I know. Buffalo currant. Here's a really pretty plant that doesn't get used very much. It does really well, sort of in the back of a garden, sticking up in front and back of other things. It blooms like February. So this is a really early bloomer when hardly anything else is going on. It also smells like heaven when it blooms. It's really, really a sweet smelling blossom. And the butterflies like it. The first butterflies out in the spring will head for your ribes. It's followed by little fruits that are edible, and not only for animals, but for people. It does form a thicket though, so you know, be prepared for it to spread sideways, and you might have to keep it in check. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I apologize for being late. I thought we said 7:30 with the start time, but I missed the beginning. I just wanted to make sure these are all native to North Texas.
Okay, the question is, are they all native to North Texas? And the answer is almost. They are native to Texas, but not every one of them is a local. I went to my local green belt and I said, okay, what is surviving the floods and the drought that we have? Rock rose is one that's not a local native, but it's still extremely durable. I accidentally got one in a place where I didn't want it, and I've been trying to get it out for years. And so it is a survivor. It is not going to give up easily on you. There's a close-up of that rock rose. Beautiful plant in the hibiscus family. One of my more recent favorites is the shrubby bones that fragrant mist flower. I finally got my hands on one of these, and I'm so glad I did. It's one of the latest things to bloom. Again, I don't water my front yard much at all, just a few times a year. And this has been performing really well. That one is not a photo. Most of the photos are mine, but this one is not. Real butterfly magnet, bees love it as well. And it blooms at a time of year when some things have shut down and are already resting. This won't bloom until pretty late in the season.
If you're going to buy one, the genus name has been changed to Ageratinum.
That's a good point. Yeah. So sometimes when I'm putting together a slideshow, I have to decide, do I use the name that everybody has in your books? Or do I use the name that's, current this week? Because the names do change. And Peter has mentioned that the new name is Ageratina habitats. A lot of times the nurseries don't catch up very fast with the newer names. So after a couple of years, then I try to switch over eventually. Good point. So anyway, it is anything that's labeled this flower in its name or bone set in its name is going to be very attractive to pollinators. Here it is. And some trees. Red buds. Yay. We like red buds. They're not long-lived trees, so they're not huge trees, but they're really delightful trees, and they are pretty darn tough. I really thought that red buds belonged in the woods, but they needed a lot of shade. But it turns out if you cheat a little bit and you get a Mexican red bud or the Texas red bud, and you can have seen in full sun like they have here at the herd, and it's doing fine. So they're a little bit more sun tolerant than I thought they were.
The flowers are also edible.
Yes, that's a good point. So Peter mentioned that the flowers are edible, the little very young pods are edible, and I think you might even be able to eat leaves. Not everything in the meat family is and not only do we like them, pretty much everything out here likes them that's flying at that time of year. These are some of the earlier bloomers in our landscape. They have in common sort of a weird weeping form, the traveler red bud. Another one of my super favorites, and I just could recommend this thing all day long, is Mexican plum. It's so much better than a Bradford pear. Bradford pears are white, but this is like a clean, bright white. A Bradford pear smell like sweat socks. This one smells wonderful.
And they don't break during storms.
Yeah, and they don't break and fall on your house like the Bradford. So I think it's just a much better tree. You get the same lifespan with much stronger wood and more ecological services out of the Mexican plum. Some of those butterflies that really enjoy those swallowtails. But I also find lots of our native bees and other butterflies using it. And then it's followed by the fruit. You can eat the fruits yourself, or you can leave them for the birds, the raccoons, things like that. Now, how about sun and shade? Well, I gotta say, my farm has the worst dirt ever. It's really bad dirt. And I've got some that are growing in full sun, and I've got some that are growing in the middle of the woods. So it's really not too picky about sun and shade either. And you know what? It's also growing in that woods that floods by my local creek in the black clay soil. So you can put it in pretty much in the soil. You can put it in sun, you can put it in shade, you can let it get wet, you can let it dry out, and the thing will still grow. Check your plant. Okay, so a few perennials. asters. All right, this is sort of a staple of gardens, and the garden centers have caught on. You can buy this one practically anywhere now, which is kind of cool. Our Texas native plants are going mainstream. It shouldn't be surprising. They've been mainstream in Europe for like a century. People have been taking plants from Texas over to Europe and using them in European gardens. So why does it seem so weird for us to use them in our gardens, right? It shouldn't be strange. This is a different aster that blooms in the fall that's taller, Aster praealta. So that our Aster longifolius, the one that was on the previous slide, stays smaller and shrubbier. This one tends to get sort of tall wands, about 4 or 5 feet tall. And so I wouldn't recommend this one unless you have acreage like I do, or if you have a spot in the back of the garden against the fence, in which case it's a really nice addition back there. And there is longifolius again. This is actually one of the I-35 way stations down in the hill country that the Native Plant Society has installed. Blackfoot daisy. Now here's another one that I just can't quite make friends with. I really love this plant. I have wanted it forever. And there is something about the drainage in my yard. It's just a little bit too wet for it with a little bit too much shade now. So I haven't been successful in keeping them alive. However, my friend did, and she ended up with this one. It's up just about 6 inches above the grade. She just had it up on a little mound, and it seemed to do fine in that very wet year that we had. It survived. I just keep drowning them. Oops. There is a close-up of that Blackfoot daisy, and I know I've described several things that are smelling like heaven. This one really does. Actually, this one smells a lot like baby powder, old-fashioned baby powder to my nose. Now, here's one I can only recommend with caveats. It does come in green and in silver. I have both that grow on the farm. For some reason, some are silver, some are green. And it is going to spread like crazy. If you have a place you need covered, that's a good thing. But if you have an erodible slope that you needed something for, so it might be a feature that you actually wanted. And I think that one on the left top is not the same thing. But these are also more silvery artemisias. I love this plant. I am unabashedly a fan of Purple Snake Master. And it's because it just doesn't have any bad habits. It's too easy to grow, pretty much grows itself. I've got mine in way too much shade, and it's still pretty happy there, blooming away. But it blooms in full sun out on the prairie with nobody tending it out there as well. It blooms in July. Let that sink in. This thing is just getting started being happy in July, when a lot of other plants are really suffering and have shut down for a while. And it is just really great for the pollinators as well. So lots of great things about Rattlesnake Master. It's also architecturally a really interesting looking plant. Sort of not much out there like that. It divides into 3 pieces. So it always has a really strange look to it. Did you have a question?
Yes, I had something like that in my garden, and unfortunately I can't remember the tag that came with it. It's creating the same seed, same form, but it doesn't have.
Is it purple?
Yes.
Okay, so if you have a purple one, that's another Thuringia, and that's Thuringia leavenworthii probably, or another sea holly that's related to that. And the leavenworthii with hot, like royal purple blooms, that's an annual, so you'll probably have to replant that one. But this is a perennial.
And what's the species on this?
This one is Thuringia yuccifolia. And I really have like 2 giant oaks that are shading this one, and it still blooms about 4.5, 5 feet tall with all those little sort of alien cheerleader blossoms. Ankle and daisy, I thought I'd go by there and don't know where it went, but I saw one come in. Another tough as nails Chuck Norris plant for your landscape. The leaves have an interesting look, even when it's not flowering, but it does have a rather long flowering season for perennial. It can just kind of keep going for a long time if you get enough water. Same with the Millingly sage. This one is tough. I visit a prairie regularly that has like 2 inches of dirt over white rock. It is a really poor soil site. And there is gorgeous Millingly sage blooming. It's out there. Nobody planted that. It is native here in Collin County. Well, here in Dallas County. But there it is out there on that white chalk prairie. Oh, I like this one so much. You put it another one. Again, this is in the wild. A lot of my photos are taken in the wild instead of in a garden. Here's another fun one. Sun, shade, wet, dry. Chili Piquin will take it all, and it will deliver these fiercely hot little peppers. If you eat these, you're a better man than I. I'm absolutely not going to do one of those for you. But the birds love them. They don't have that same sensation of hot that we get from hot peppers, and they eat these things like popcorn. So it's a really good understory shrub. Now, that name, annual, I don't know who named this and when, but I suspect it was somebody in a cold part of Europe. And the seeds were sent home from here and tested, and they decided, to name it annual since it didn't live through the winter. But mine always lives through the winter. It's not an annual per se. So I think you can get a lot more seasons out of it than just one normally. Prairie verbena. Now this one really does not want to be flooded. It would prefer dry leaves, but it's so tough, it may degrade anyway. I once took a piece out from under a child's swing set in July and just dug it up with a spoon. I had it in a car, which wasn't all that effective, and transplanted it in July in Texas, and the thing lived. So I want to tell you, this one just wants to live for you. If you're not drowning yet, it's going to be very happy. It really likes a lot of sun and a lot of heat.
How big do those get?
They'll spread to be, a patch that's about a yard wide if it's a really big one. And that's probably going to take a couple of years. Not very tall, about 10 inches. And for those of you at home, I'm sorry, I'm answering some questions from the audience. I try to remember to repeat those. I don't always get that right. So this is that in Pocket Garden, and it is that prairie verbena again that you can find on pretty much every neglected roadside and prairie in North Texas. Well, one of the ways to get that would be to check the parking lot cracks at the grocery store. Shiny goldenrod. I really like the shiny goldenrod on my farm. It is acid soil up there. I'm not positive how well it performs in alkaline soils, but if you have acid soil, this thing is a winner. Sometimes my farm is so wet that all the little animal burrows have standing water in them for weeks that you can see at the surface. It just turns to soup sometimes. And then sometimes it's so dry that you put your foot down and it sinks into soft sand. And then this plant will cover all of that. That's why I like it. Everything else likes it too. There's this little white button for those. See if I can avoid it. Texas New Start. Here's one. No bad habits at all, best I can tell. It's a really charming plant, and I think more gardens should have it. It's been at the Herb Museum so long in their gardens that it was in full sun. Now it's in quite a lot of shade, and it's still happy there, and it's still blooming. But you know what it hasn't done? It hasn't eaten the world and taken it to the garden. It's still exactly where they put it. It has made a slightly wider circle clump of itself, but it hasn't just gone rampant everywhere. I have some at the farm that tends to spread a little bit wider, I think because the soil is really terrible there. And the one at the farm smells like vanilla. That's the one from the farm. How do you propagate that? I think it can be done by divisions. And I think it can also be done by seed, although I don't have any advice for how to germinate that seed. Frostweed. So are you familiar with frostweed?
It has a motto. The motto is today the garden, tomorrow the world.
And I think that that is exactly right. So today the garden, tomorrow the world. But I like it enough today because I think the babies are easy to pull out as long as you catch them as seedlings. And I think that most of the recruits in my garden, the volunteers, are from seed and not from groups. The basic parent plant will get larger. And it can be kind of hard to dig one out if you let it get very large and then you decide you want it out. But this is a plant that will bloom in full shade in the fall. And then hardly anything else wants to bloom. You've got this anchoring the shady spots and attracting all kinds of pollinators. This is a patch of frostweed that another friend took. And you can just see all the butterflies. I think most of them are queens, or there might be a couple monarchs tucked in here. It also has cool hardware tricks that it does. So if you have a really sudden cold spell every night, you wake up bleary-eyed, you go get your coffee, you look out your windows, and it looks like somebody has toilet paper through your heart. It might be your frostweed doing this. The stems split open during the night. All this liquid sort of exudes itself and it freezes into these incredibly delicate frosty shapes. It has to kind of be a still, very cold night for this to happen. But it's really an interesting phenomenon and great fun for grandkids. All people who act like grandkids, yes. Maximilian sunflower, I can only recommend the caveats because this is another one that can be very progressive. One of the Maximilian sunflower cultivars that gets marketed sometimes is Aztec. Aztec was developed by a plant materials center out in West Texas, and it was developed to be repeatedly grazed in West Texas and come back. So if you take that plant and you put it here, you get 9-foot tall bully plants that want to take over the world. There are local Maximilian sunflowers that are much better behaved. Unfortunately, I can't tell you how to pick one. It's a sort of hit and miss, try it and see. If you get one that's really aggressive, it will spread like that. If you don't, it will just make a slightly bigger clump every year and stay at a manageable height. What I have found is that you can cut them back about now and they'll bloom much shorter. So what was a manageable, really tall garden plant can be turned into something that works in your average suburban landscape. This is a clump that is pretty self-managing. It's at Oak Point Park in Plano. And this clump has been there a good 10 years now at least. And it hasn't spread all over the place. It just gets wider. And it's only about 4 feet tall. Green milkweed, if you didn't already pick some up, it's over there. It's got fantastic toppers, no matter what the tops look like. And this one is blooming in my front yard. But look where it is. You see that dappled shade on the sidewalk? This is an unexpected amount of shade that this milkweed is putting up with. I really didn't think it was going to do that well there. I let it stay there to see. And it's been there for 10 years. It's doing fine in shade. It's a live oak, so that's some really good shade that it gets. And it's not that far from the house, but only get the house in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the neighbor's oak tree has grown up, which, I mean, it really gets less light that you'd expect for a milkweed. He's still doing fine. In fact, I just picked ponds from that one today. Here it is out in the field, and this is an exceptionally happy milkweed. This one's a year after a burn, and this one had found everything it needed in full sun out in this really dry prairie in Wise County. This one is the milkweed that's most flexible in its requirements. I also see this in ditches that flood. And so it's in a drainage ditch where it's going to flood in black clay. It's in red sandy soil out in Wise County. It's in the shade, it's in the sun, it's everywhere. And very flexible in its needs. And of course, everybody wants to ask, what about potting the milkweed? Can I grow this in a pot? Yes, the answer is yes. This one lived in its pot for about 5 years. And the only reason it died is that a shrub sent a root through the one drain hole, plugged it up. And I came out there in a wet winter, and I found ice floating in 3 inches of water in the top of the pot. The whole pot was completely flooded. And so it did die that year, but only because I let it freeze wet. There's a close-up of that flower. This is a favorite of the monarchs. They love it. Now, let's try it again. I guess I like it a lot. There's a whole bunch of pictures. Leotris. Okay, I have the Leotris species plural here, SPP, because pretty much any Leotris that you want sometimes is going to be a great pollinator plant. And it's not that every Leotris is super flexible, but there is a Leotris species for your needs, whether you have a wet space or a dry space. And so you want to do a little bit of research and try to find the ones that do meet your needs. That one on the far right is Leotris punctata mucronata, and it grows itself out here on the prairies with no help whatsoever, no supplemental water. It has a corm underneath, or a corm-like structure where it can store a little bit of extra water and still reliably come out every September, October when the monarchs are coming through. A lot of things might bloom in the fall if the weather's good. This one's going to go ahead and do it anyway because it has underground reserves. This is out in Fort Worth on a prairie where it gets no attention. Actually, that one's not. That was from my farm. That one's from Fort Worth. Look at the butterflies on that. So if you ever wanted pollinators in your garden for any reason, get yourself some Leotris. Heck, you might as well get 3 or 4 different species and see which one works best in your situation. They will all live at a slightly different time too. Prairie coneflower. All right, this one can also be called thimble flower or a few other common names. And again, this one is a survivor. Once it's in, it is going to perform for you pretty well. The only problem I have with mine is beetles. I seem to get these little green beetles that eat it up in some years. Other years it's fine. It reseeds freely, so this is another one you want to watch. When the babies come up, make sure you want them where they are or move them quickly. Yes, question? Is it an annual? No, it's going to be bagged every year. It does look delicate, like it might be an annual, but it's not, best I can tell. And it will come in red and yellow, or pure yellow. So you'll see quite a bit of variation in the colors, especially if you buy a mixed packet. You may get several different colorways from that. Look at this flower. Wow. Oh, I like this plant. Okay, this is not a Greg's blue mint flower. I believe this one is a Conoclinium celestinium, regular blue flower is one of its common names. And this is growing next to a boardwalk, which is over a sometimes damp area at the Herd Museum. So this area does flood, but it also gets baked dry. I've seen big cracks under that boardwalk when the soil dries out. So this thing is working with the floods, it's working with the dry, and it's very happy. And then, yes.
There is another one that's blue, Conoclinium gregii. They're pretty close, aren't they?
They are. He's asking about Conoclinium gregii. The flower style is extremely similar, pretty much identical. The color of the flower is the same. What's different is the shape of the leaf on those two plants. Yeah. So many of us are familiar with the grace blue mist flower, and that's the Conoclinium gregii. Yeah, it used to be Eupatorium. This one used to be Eupatorium as well, I believe.
Isn't an export, because I come from South Africa, and I remember growing up seeing this in Ireland, no?
Oh, wow, that's a question I don't know how to answer. Good one. This person wanted to know, is it exported to other countries because they've seen something similar in other places? You might have seen a blue ageratum. Ageratum has blue fluffy flowers like that, so it could have been one of those. But this one is our local native mist flower. The graceful mist flower actually comes from a little bit further west and south of here.
We have a question from Zoom, whether Leatrice needs companion plants to stay upright.
Only the Leatrice pycnostachya, as far as I know. It is actually rather stiff and usually holds itself up.
They have mucronata. Do you think it's maybe in too much shade?
Yes, yes. If you're Leatrice with flopping, it's in too much shade. Okay, so Texas top grasses. I think I must be near the end. So with the grasses near the end. This one is little blue stem, a staple of our local prairies, right? Look how nicely it's performing in this very manicured garden of a school. It's really neat and it stays upright. It makes these kind of neat upright columns. So if you don't want things that are sort of going to take over the world and flop all over the place, you might consider a little blue stem. It's also it can be really pretty colors too, sort of alternating colors of the combs before it blooms. And then once it is done blooming, you get these really cool little seed heads that look like white eyelashes. And when those are finished, it's still vertical. You still have these nice cinnamon vertical accents. So I think this one should be used a lot. Now, where does this grow? It grows on my farm, which is on a very poor soil. It grows in the plant prairie. It will grow down in the ditch. It will grow up on rise. And you'll even see a little bits of it on that really dry, cracked, chalky soil. So it's not too fussy. Spotted scrub, that is one of our local natives, also our Texas state grass. And there it is growing in a Walmart parking lot where it is actually sort of starry. I mean, that's the happiest looking phytoscrub I've ever seen. But you can make it a small accent plant in your garden or grow it out on those very shallow, very poor soils where it's really happy. It likes that a lot. It's less inclined to be growing right smack in the middle of a dense old growth blackland prairie because other things just kind of bully it out, I think. Full sun, perfectly happy. Inland Sierra's one that had more potential than I gave it credit for. I have always seen this in the shade, and I was told it was a shade plant. But I found it growing in a garden in Junction, Texas, where it is in full sun, and it's really happy there. It gets a little bit more water in this full sun garden, but as long as it has that water, it's okay. Yes, question.
Those of us who volunteer at Texas Discovery Gardens have been spending our Tuesdays digging that out of the Benny Simpson beds.
Yes, so this one you can only recommend with caveats because it is an influenza spreader. It will tend to colonize the whole area. If you have a space to fill, like a little triangle between three pieces of cement, it's great. But if you let it get loose in your gardens, you may curse it forever after that. It is very difficult to remove once it's in. But it is sure pretty. Let's have a look at those little seed heads again, little diamonds. And so pretty that for us to use as an arrangement. Maybe that's the solution. Go ahead and grow it for the foliage, and then cut it all and give it to your local forest before it seeds out. I went to this one too, very grandma. This one showed up on a median in my town, and I thought, isn't that cool? They're going to use a native grass in this median, and they had, unfortunately, they kind of have like rows of it. I thought, well, it would have been nicer if they planted that sort of randomly. I don't know why they didn't. And you know, darn it, it looked great that year. It looked really good. It's low, so it wasn't blocking anybody's view, but they treated it like they treated annual color, and they took it out the following year. I don't know why. The thing was really happy there in the media, and it was doing really well. There it is. Oh, neat roast. It's like they have the birds, but they don't have music, sort of. All right, just a few more ground covers and vines. Lighter leaf savings. Here's one that can be very aggressive. Again, it's great if you have an area that you need stabilized or covered. It will grow in full sun, full shade, anything in between. Happy with flooding, happy with droughts. I use mine as a ground cover under my live oak. That's my front yard. And it is doing fine in that dense shade of the live oak. It's a little bit less thick now than it was, but not picky about its conditions. It does reseed very freely. The good news is the small plants are super easy to pull out. So not very difficult to move anything you don't want. Even the mature plants aren't hard to pull out.
It's evergreen too, which is another virtue.
Right, good point from the audience. We have somebody say it is evergreen, which is why I planted it under my live oak, because I couldn't get grass to grow there anymore. So it does keep the ground covered both summer and winter. And it has neat purple leaves in winter. Oh, that black switch, I keep hitting that. Here's a silver coffee bud, not maybe strictly native here, but I wanted to show you that sort of silver finish on this, that water miser adaptation. And I think maybe, here it is. So I thought that needed a sunny, dry space for sure, just because it's silver and it, you know, it's got that very clear water miser adaptation. But this one was growing in a pot with the Mercer Arboretum in the Houston area. Houston is not dry by any stretch of the imagination. And I think we're still cleaning up from the last big flood when I was there and took this. So it seems to be okay with more water than I thought it was going to be out with. Here's the green version though. This is a cursed logweed or a lovely ground cover, depending on who you are. It's called a dollar weed by some people. The guy at Home Depot will be glad to tell you how to kill it. Other people would rather just grow it for its neat appearance and its ground cover potential.
So that's in Texas native?
Yes. Another Texas native, a water clover. It's a misnomer. It's not a clover, it's fern. It sure doesn't look like a fern, does it? It looks more like a clover. But again, the Herd Museum had a bed of this that was in full sun and gradually became more and more shady. But it will grow right down into a water feature, or it will grow in this really hot dry medium, and it's okay there too. There's another one that's super flexible and it's water needs the frog fruit. I see this flooded at the lake sometimes. And then the water recedes and it's doing fine. I've also seen it spilling over a brick wall. That was like a a 10-foot brick wall above surrounding landscape. And it looked really happy there as well. So it really doesn't have to have a lot of water, but it doesn't, and if you need a lot of water. As far as sun and shade goes, though, it really does prefer sun. This is the I-35 way station down in the hill country. They've used rock fruit, I think, really effectively on this crescent of soil there between the pavements. Pearl honeysuckle, super easy to grow. One of our local natives and beats the socks off Japanese honeysuckle, in my opinion. Japanese honeysuckle is very aggressive. Pearl honeysuckle, not so much. It really will stay where you put it. And it can bloom very showy, like this one has been doing. This is my back corner. Close up, you just can't beat this for beauty. It's really, really pretty. And the hummingbirds like it. Some bees will use it, but you know who else uses it? House finches. They'll come along and they'll rip a flower off and sort of stick it in their mouth and suck out all the nectar and then throw it to another one. That dragonvine is one that I haven't had a lot of luck with. I think I have too much shade, maybe. But on the other hand, it's been growing by the front door of the Herd Museum for a good 10 years out of a boulder, a little pocket in a boulder. There can't be more than a cup of dirt sitting there in that pocket, so I'm not sure where its roots are. But it's been very, very tenacious in that spot, showing up year after year. This is in somebody else's garden, a friend from Plano. And one from the hill country. Wow. It's very lacy, very delicate, but very heat tolerant despite its lacy appearance. Wow, here's another one I can only recommend with caveats. This is from my back fence. And it is the traditionally colored wild form of the grosspine. A lot of you may have something called tangerine beauty at home, and it is a selected form that's got a lot more orange and a lot less yellow in it. But apparently tangerine beauty behaves better than my crossvine does. Mine was great for like 3 years. It was super. And then I was weeding about 40 feet away and I found a little fruit. So I gave it a tug, and darned if that didn't go all the way back to another plant. Like, oh my goodness, you were 40 feet over here in an attempt to root make another plant. And so I leaned there behind the edge, and it looked like a phone cable back there, twisted wires. It had sent not one, but many shoots out that far. And it was bound to take over the world. So 20 years later, I'm still trying to get rid of it. But I do like what it does for hummingbirds and a very large bees in the spring. It's also evergreen, very quick covering, evergreen vine. Yes.
It has one more virtue. It can grow on a flat surface like a wall without damaging it. And you can easily pull it off.
That is a great point. So we're going to repeat that for the at-home audience. One of the major virtues of this as an evergreen vine is that it adheres to a wall with little suckers in a way that other vines don't. It doesn't tear things up. And so it is a really pretty vine if you can stomach some of its habits.
It really takes some shade.
It will. And that for the home audience, that was, it will take some shade, and it will also go in a fair amount of sun.
How do you get rid of it if once it's traveled?
I don't know how to get rid of it. On the show every spring. So I still have it. I just reduced it so that it stays in a manageable area. One more vine, Mecania scandens, the monarch vine. It's called the monarch vine because it blooms about the same time that monarchs come through the fall. And this is one that will grow in a swamp. It can grow with its roots completely submerged in water, But that same swamp where I go to visit this every year, also dries out. And so it's fine in a home garden. It's really okay. It can make do in quite a bit of shade. And this one was actually growing right next to the blue flower along that boardwalk.
We had a question about crossvine. Does it need to be trimmed back in the winter?
Does crossvine need to be trimmed back in the winter is the question. I don't. I like it to be evergreen. The birds use it as shelter in the winter. It's a very good shelter plant for birds. And so I do leave mine. But you know, you can trim it back anytime you want to, and it's just going to laugh at you. So and you're not going to kill it by trimming it if it needs to be trimmed in the winter. Yeah, you can. And nothing is advancing. So, oh, here we go. And there is that monarch vine growing right next to this flower in the woods. Isn't it pretty? It also smells good. All right, so I think that's all I had today, but I'd be happy to take questions. And I know this is sort of a grab bag of plants. My thought is always, people want to see plants. And if one got your attention and caught your imagination, come in and just start exploring and we start with a little bit and see if it'll work for you. Yes.
This may not be a theme for tonight, but I see a lot of passiflora with deer and with where I walk. And passiflora incarnata grows next to the rivers. Are there any other passifloras native to North Texas?
Arthur passiflora is native to North Texas. And that's yes, the incarnata is native. That has 3 leaves and pale purple flowers. And the yellow one, the lutea, is also native to Texas. So that one, you might walk right by it and not notice it. But once you do notice it, it's quite lovely. Now, it's actually a good house plant too. I had Passiflora lutea, the yellow one, in a pot on my windowsill. I gave it a little trellis and it vined around and it bloomed indoors in its little pot. So it was quite a cheerful house plant.
And passifloras are the larval host plant for the Gulf fritillary mat.
They sure are. That's a very good point. The fertility, fritillary or fertility, you say that butterflies use the passifloras, and so you'll see them with the leaves carved up.
They do have a good, once they lay their eggs, like within like a few weeks.
Yeah, they can strip it down to bare ones very quickly if you get a whole load of them. But the plant is getting better. It does not worry about having to sleep strip. So, yeah. I had a friend that grew her passiflora up into her oak tree and just let it do that. And she knew that, you know, the fritillaries were going to come and strip that. But that was okay with her. It was for the butterflies, and that way nothing looked bad. The oak still had its leaves. Anybody else have questions? Yes.
I could use some advice with Engelmann daisies. So even just today, I was treating mine because they flowered. I mean, they're really done flowering actually. Then they flop. So I've been trimming them back to below where the flower stalks came up. So I saw some of them had new rosette growth, so I cut those all the way back.
Oh,
And
what to do?
Yeah.
Engelmann daisy. Okay, so this question was about Engelmann daisy, which a lot of them have finished blooming right now. And the tops are looking a little ratty. Karen says she's been cutting hers back below where the wood stalk comes up, and she's noticing some bottom growth. And that's great. You just throw a little bit of water on that, let the leaves come back out, and you should have good looking leaves whenever it's got enough water to do so. So you didn't do anything wrong?
I'm kind of hoping for another question.
You know, plants don't read calendars or books. And so sometimes you get an extra bloom from things, and it's not all that weird. I have some things that are fall bloomers that will occasionally bloom in spring and vice versa. And I would think that it's more dependent on the weather conditions than anything. Yes.
Couple of questions. Is the Engelmann, is it easy to move it if you decide you don't like where you put it?
Is Engelmann a huge transplant? In my experience, it hasn't been hard. Yes.
And when you say something grows aggressively sideways, are you talking about the roots generally?
Okay, that's a good question. I've used the word aggressive for plants several times. And frequently what they do is send out little roots and sprout a new plant underground. So you can't even tell it's about to happen until it happens. But others will send out vines that then touch down and root. And so you can have several kinds of spread. Others will simply reseed really quickly. The wirely sage is an example of a plant that makes a lot of seeds. And the seeds kind of spring out of the plant as well. So it will end up in places where you didn't invite it.
The forest in front of my apartment complex, which is a flat plain in the middle of Alice, the bed of the forest has been completely monopolized by fingers. I looked at a road invader, but is there anything one can do to make space for the locals?
That's such a sad question. I'm sorry. He's living near a forest that's been invaded by vinca. And unfortunately, that's not too uncommon. It is a non-native plant that spreads really aggressively. And it spreads from shoots at the base, and I think it also may root at nodes where it touches down. I'm not positive on that, but it was frequently planted in cemeteries and things like that. So if there's an old cemetery back there or an old home site, it may have come from that. And it is very difficult to get rid of because if you break off one little piece of the root, it's going to resprout. So I think probably contact the Master Naturalist chapter, round up some help, get out there and get after it really aggressively, maybe a couple of times to see if you can seriously reduce that. I have woods near me that have been taken over by privet, and they're so dense with privet that you literally cannot step off the trail. There is no place to put your foot down. It's that dense. So it can get really bad. And of course, when it's that thick with invasive, aggressive species, what hope do native plants have to take down the state? Anybody else? Yeah.
I have a question. I just planted some little bluestem and I see people cutting it in the winter and it looks weird. And I'm just wondering, really cut it? What are you doing to make it look nice?
Question on maintenance of a little bluestem club. You notice people that are cutting theirs and missing part of the elegant beauty of this plant for the winter. I really like the tall cinnamon stalks. However, once they turn cinnamon, they're not really doing anything to the plant. So it's your choice about whether you like that or don't like that and want to trim them. I would always leave mine and then trim it when I saw the first bits of new growth in the spring. So I haven't missed any of the seasonal beauty. Yeah.
How far do you trim it?
I would leave about 6 inches above ground so that you don't damage the ground.
But could that be also a place where you have some privet in the
Could you have larvae hiding in that grass clump? Yes, you could. So particularly native grasses with skirts that kind of, come out and bow over. That's a great place for larvae and overwintering butterflies and things to be. So I'm not very aggressive about cutting anything back. I kind of tend to let it stay as long as I can. But in the case of a little bluestem, I see no need or reason to trim it back for the winter. I think it's simply a habit of landscaping crews, and so it gets done. Landscaping crews want to have something to do every week when they come out, so they will do things they don't need doing. Other questions? Is that it? Okay, nothing from online. All right, well, thank you so much for being patient. Might have been a bit long, and thanks for coming out and we appreciate that. Oh, yeah. Over here, if you're here in person, there are some pockets of seats on that fine table there from the Collin County chapter of the Native Plant Society. And it is voluntary donation. There is a make your own change bag there. We do have some suggested donations out there, but go ahead and help yourselves to those seats and feel free to make your own change. I trust you all like my brother. So, no, I really do trust my brother. It's okay.
You trust your brother.
Think we'll move this microphone back to the stand. Is there any more chapter business?
And that one, we have 5 Southia and as there is, Big Blue Stage for giveaway.
First slide again. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hold on, let me just go to the front instead of, yes.
Slides.
Let me
Thank you.
go. to
I
the
didn't
front.
think to get out my camera. then.
Yes.
I will check in a second. This one?
Oh, wait, I'm gonna
Oh,
take a picture of the
please.
slide. Okay.
Wait, let me stop this one.
I can even take a picture of your screen.
This one?
The list of there, no, next one. Next one, here we go. That's the one. It's one of those that thank you so much. It made a beautiful, like a rainbow going up the screen.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually checked, I was looking at my desk, I got ready to leave, and it's buried somewhere on my desk.